Well, with Amari Bailey out again, the Bruins are destined for a low-scoring scrap against the Utah Utes at home. Let's talk about it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Welcome back to the Locked On UCLA podcast. Thanks for making it your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcasts, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for your support. Well, it's the nitty-gritty of Pac-12 season for the UCLA Bruins and Mick Cronin. A week off in between games from the USC near second half collapse, and then watching everybody just kind of throw up on themselves over the weekend. The Bruins avoided that and find themselves the only unbeaten remaining in the Pac-12. We talked about seeding and everything. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of this UCLA versus Utah matchup. They're coached by second-year head coach Craig Smith. Last year, the Utes had 11 wins, and they were 11-20, 4-16 in the Pac-12. This year, Utah, 12 wins, already surpassing last year's win total. And they have 5 wins. They were 5-0 before their most recent loss to Oregon over the weekend. And that was their best start ever in the Pac-12. So for the Bruins, for the first time since Utah's joined the Pac-12, UCLA will host Utah as a ranked team. They played them last year in the Huntsman Center as a ranked team, but the Bruins have never officially hosted Utah as a ranked team at home in Pauley Pavilion since Utah has been a conference foe. And as Mick Cronin mentioned in his practice availability to the media, or post-practice, I should say, no Amari Bailey, and he is out most likely for the entire week, both the Utah and Colorado games, which is interesting considering UCLA won a game without him. They've won a few games actually without him. And what will it mean for this Utah game? Well, depth will be crucial because Utah is almost like, maybe not almost, but an identical defensive standout like UCLA. Why do I say that? You go up and down the numbers for this Utah Utes team, and largely they were in the 150s, close to 200s in defensive metrics last year under their first-year head coach, who came over from Utah State. This year, they're almost in the top 25 when it comes to rebounding, scoring margin, blocks, just pretty much some key defensive statistics. They are amongst the best in the Pac-12. Let's get to it. Defensive field goal percentage, number 4 in the country. Guarding the 3, they're number 5 in the country. Scoring defense, they only allow 61.5 points per game. That's top 25. They get a lot of defensive rebounds, a lot of rebounds in general, and they are a force to be reckoned with in the paint when it comes to their defense. And then you go up and down looking at the tail of the tape. Well, UCLA averages just about 78 points per game, Utah 73. Both defenses allow just a little over 60 points per game. They both have high scoring margins. Shooting's practically the same from the field. 3-point percentage, 46% to 48%. They both play outstanding 3-point defense, but Utah does a little better. Utah's a little bit better rebounding and getting the blocks, while the Bruins, as we've known all year long, they force the turnover and make it hard for you to score, except for USC in that second half when it came to their 20 points in the paint. So both teams have their select matchups and their strengths defensively. Of course, the Bruins a little bit more star-led, but Utah has one Brandon Carlson, a 7-foot senior who can stretch the floor, hit the 3, and also be a wrecking force defensively in the paint defensively, just like what USC had in Josh Morgan, just without the offense. So the Bruins are finding themselves in what might be another low-scoring game. We saw what the Bruins did against USC. 44 points first half, arguably the best 20 minutes they've played all season long against a conference rival, their crosstown rival at home in a packed house. Not sure how packed it'll be on an 8 p.m. Pac-12 only game against Utah, but the energy should still be there because Utah arguably is better than USC despite the 5 losses. They play good defense. They have some key guys who can shoot, and the Bruins should be aware because even though Utah most recently lost 70-60 to Oregon at home, where maybe they were on the precipice of getting in that receiving votes category, if they beat Oregon at home, Maybe you leap in the top 25. I doubt it. But they're one of those teams that was on the bubble, a little bit in, and now with that loss, you bounce off the bubble because Oregon, with their terrible start, you lose to them at home. That's not going to look good like the Bruins almost did earlier this year. So for Utah, they're led by one Brandon Carlson, who will be a matchup nightmare, which we'll get to in a moment. But he averages about 17 points per game and is elite in almost every sense of the word. 15 points per game, 15.7. I misread that. 15 points per game, 7 rebounds to go along with 38 blocks. Utah's got 4 guys that average double figures and 4 guys that average more than 5.5 rebounds per game. So there will be an emphasis on what Mick Cronin will tell his team, a lot of it on rebounding. Because Mick Cronin, what was he saying? He says after Christmas, teams are a lot tougher to play because adjustments are made. Coaches are trying to keep their jobs. And for the Bruins, well, they're going to be the highlight game, as they almost always are, but the highlight game being the highest ranked, the best team in the Pac 12, and teams that there's a lot of teams that could still maybe creep in the tournament if they go on a run in Pac 12 play. And if you steal a UCLA and an Arizona win, well, Utah's already got one of those with a dominant Arizona win earlier this year, 81-66, beating them down, leading by 17 at the half, and giving the Wildcats their first loss in the Huntsman Center, or giving them their first loss earlier this season, I should say, to start Pac 12 play when everybody's like, whoa, Utah, you got it like that? And yes, this year they have improved significantly. They've got great Gabe Madsen, Marco Anthony, Lazar Stefanovic. Those are 4 guys that all average double figures, and 3 of those guys average 38% or better from 3. So if any of those guys get hot from downtown in terms of like their best scorers, those are the guys to look out for. And Stefanovic, more of a bench option. He's started about 5 games at this point, but this is a lineup for Utah that can be lethal and tough to guard. So Utah, they board with the best of them. They play defense. So we should expect this to be a low scoring game for the Bruins. So with no Amari Bailey, it might be a bit of a matchup nightmare, which we'll talk about after we tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline, well, they're always your number one source for all your sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. Pro football, they got the playoffs starting. College football season over, but you can never have too many early futures bets, right? Basketball, World Cup action, they had all that through December. Just look for what they have coming up in the future, as they've got it all with betonline.net. If you love podcasting with betting fixes, you can get those with BetOnline as well. Fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Where it starts. Rumbling on here with Locked On UCLA, previewing UCLA versus Utah. And this is what I'm thinking is some keys and some matchup nightmares for the Bruins. Mick Cronin was quoted as saying, yes, Adem Bona is getting better, kind of paraphrasing here, but we need Bona to get 10 rebounds per game. Well, there would not be a better way for Adem Bona to come out and become a rebounding beast as a big man down low against the trees of Utah. Brandon Carlson stands 7 foot, and he is their leading rebounder with about 7 rebounds per game. Again, as already highlighted, Utah can rebound the basketball. They block shots down low. So if the Bruins can feed Bona, which is what Mick Cronin and the Bruins have been working on, trying to figure out what was so successful in the first half against SC and what was so detrimental in that second half against SC, which was allowing points in the paint and lack of passing, taking some contested jumpers. Can the Bruins get those easy points down low with Bona against a pretty stout Utah defense? Because if UCLA goes on a scoring drought like they did against SC, they're not going to win this game. And they have to be able to not go on such long scoring droughts. And it seems like consistently, there's always spits and stretches, which happens in the game of basketball. But the Bruins, in some moments, they just get a little bit too easy to guard and take too many contested shots. And if you're starting to miss some easy shots too, well, that could be a recipe for disaster against a Utah team. Again, top 5 in field goal defense, amongst the top 25 in terms of scoring defense. So for the Bruins to be successful, they have to rebound, rebound, rebound. And a lot of the focus, especially with Amari Bailey out, and while this isn't exactly apples to oranges, Adem Bona, being that true freshman, being one of those standouts in the post. He needs to step up again and again and again, continuing to be that Pac-12 Freshman of the Week. And Bona needs to be an elite force down low. Mick Cronin was quoted as saying he needs to be an elite rebounder, not just for his career, but for us to be an elite team, which is exactly what the Bruins need. Because Bona's figuring out how to score. With the big block, he knows how to hustle and play some good defense. But now he's got to learn how to leap up, get, as Cronin says, become a good rebounder. You need to become a two-handed rebounder. Got to go up two hands, grab it down like a man with the strength, and come down with the board. And if the Bruins don't rebound against Utah, if they at least keep it close, they will lose this game unless they're shooting like 70%. Because Utah can rebound, and if Bona gets in foul trouble, can't guard Carlson, he might have to stretch out and see how we can play defensively out on the wing. If he gets into foul trouble with a little up fake and a Bona bump and gets into foul trouble, the Bruins could be in for a long night. If Utah can come through and get Bona in foul trouble, get another Bruin in foul trouble, whoever it may be, UCLA might be in for a long night, which might be the recipe for success for a lot of teams when playing on the road in Pauley Pavilion. But this game particularly will focus on Bona not only staying on the floor, but being an important, impactful force. Not just him playing 35 minutes and putting up 5 points, a couple of rebounds, and a block here. No, this is a game where Bona, the Bruins, first off, need to feed it to him. Got to get him points in the paint. And then not only that, he's got to rebound and play defense. He's got to be excellent in all windows because you can't just put it on Jalen Clark to go get 30 steals a game or Jaime Jaquez Jr. to do the same, or expect Tiger Campbell to go play 40 minutes and do that relentlessly, time in and time out, especially with the team that isn't as deep. You got to get guys off their feet. And Colorado's around the corner. They're just as capable of upsetting the Bruins as are ASU and Arizona, all in the next coming 3 games after this Utah game. So can the Bruins find ways, especially with the week off, and score? Utah, when they give up 70 or more points, they are 1-3. So 3 of their 5 losses have come when they've given up 70 or more. UCLA, their only 2 losses this year have come when they've given up 70 or more points. So this could be a game where it's first to 70 if we even get there. So again, the Bruins have to rebound. Can't go ice cold. If you go ice cold like they did against SC, either at the beginning of the game, at the end, there's no way UCLA can win this game. So again, got to find a way to rebound. Can't go ice cold. And if for some reason either side can get to 70 points, if the Bruins are playing well, like they were in the first half against SC, one would think they should almost always get to 70 points, although they only finished with 60 against the Trojans. So in my mind, this will be more of a low-scoring game where the Bruins will have to grind it out. Won't be maybe the most, beautiful of games based on the tail of the tape here. You look at the numbers, see how these two teams play, and again, can the Bruins stop Brandon Carlson? And then again, there's still 3 other Utes of the running Utes, back in the 90s when they were good, trying to get back to relevancy here in the Pac-12. They've got Madsen, who can shoot 38% from 3. They've got Lazar, Stefanovic, Wooster, who is a key guy that can grab 5.5 boards. They've got guys up and down the boards that are big, can grab rebounds, and they play defense and make sure it's tough for you to shoot. This could be one of those games where it's a true test to how many points the Bruins can score in the paint. Because if Utah is as good as they are at guarding the 3, that might limit a David Singleton who is starting, has been getting double figures, but maybe a little bit better defense might limit him from getting those shots or the amount of open looks, or he might have to post up more contested jumpers, which might lead to a lower percentage. So for the Bruins, again, can't go in so many lulls, and Bona being on the floor and being a factor will be the reason the Bruins win this game at home. It's one thing to win this game, it's another thing to lose this game, which as we transition into our third and final segment of Locked On UCLA, what is the impact of winning this game and losing this game? Well, again, as I've continued to say, maybe you guys are tired of the early bracketology talk. Some of us love it when it starts from April of 2022, talking, who's the projected teams to win each conference? Whatever it is, here we are, January 2023. The impact of this win, it would be a nice home win. Won't exactly shift them past to Houston, obviously, with their 2 losses for the Bruins. But you lose this at home. This is, again, a seed killer when it comes to attacking and pointing out resumes. UCLA, they scheduled. Mick Cronin wasn't afraid to schedule teams, but again, they didn't get one of those marquee matchups at home. Lost to now two unranked teams in Las Vegas, to Baylor and to Illinois. Maryland is falling lower and lower. Kentucky is barely in the tournament at this moment. So again, UCLA's got this weird resume that looks worse and worse despite continuing to pass the eye test. And a win at home against Utah, albeit, well, it's on the Pac-12 network, probably won't get much viewership across the country as an earlier start time and a nationally ranked affair against USC does and would. Utah will definitely give UCLA a game unless the Bruins come out, put up 75, and shoot 60% from the floor, which we've seen. That's just not what I think this game is going to play out as. Again, if either team scores 70 first, that team is going to win. Hands down, that's what's going to happen in regulation. If it goes to overtime, then you kind of got to throw those numbers out the window. But for the Bruins, again, a win just kind of is the status quo and maintains that ability to be the one seed in the Pac 12 tournament, continue to move and get those wins. And it's kind of a quality win against Utah, but it hurts that they lost to Oregon in their last game because they could have been 6-0, 5-0, whatever it is, 6-0 with the Bruins, who are as well unbeaten, winners of 11 in a row, and yet the Bruins found themselves on the on the right foot these last few games. But again, as Mick Cronin said, you're not always going to play well. You have to go back to the drawing board and go through and see what led us to be successful, as he said, passing the first half, and what led the Bruins to not be so impactful defensively and dominant when packing the paint against a smaller USC lineup that scored 20 points in the paint in the second half against the Bruins. The Jekyll and Hyde of UCLA basketball all in 40 minutes, and every player will attach to it, even a Tiger Campbell, whoever it is. You can't play so poorly for a long stretch of time after playing so spectacularly to start the game. You can't be one team and the other. And the Bruins, they do go on scoring slumps. But if you kind of go up and down, kind of with the ebbs and flows of a basketball game, you can be a little bit better. UCLA, my prediction, they win this game by 5. I think this is one of those games arguably probably might not even get to the 60s, although I think UCLA might win this one like a 64-59 type of game. But again, if Bona's in foul trouble and not impactful, and the Bruins don't have an answer for the 7-foot dominant senior in Brandon Carlson, well, they might be in for a long night. And again, there's a couple of Utah kids who can get a little bit hot from three, despite Utah being ice cold from downtown. And funny enough, these are two straight Pac-12 opponents UCLA's played in both SC and Utah, where they were ice cold the game before and coming off of a disappointing offensive result. So for UCLA, they saw SC struggle from three. UCLA, they saw Utah struggle from downtown against Oregon. So how do the Bruins guard and see a Utah team that's kind of balanced in how they can share the minutes up and down the lineup against a UCLA team that, quite as honestly, might not even be as deep as Utah, but they do have a much better top heavy lineup than the Utes do, especially with Amari Bailey out. Again, the Bruins can always hang their hat on Bailey's out, but you want to get these wins and get that 12th win in a row, get to 13. And, you go to Arizona, you can give yourself a mulligan in one of those two games. You don't want to lose any games at home. This year, it's a weird year, right? Utah lost at home to Sam Houston State, which is getting love as a mid-major, but still, you don't want to lose any games at home in this year compared to in years past. So for the Bruins, get a win this one about 64-59, and move on forward. Again, not the only big matchup for UCLA basketball this week. The women, we will talk about them in the next episode and their keys when it comes to their Stanford matchup, and we'll look at who are the early enrollees to UCLA football and what that means for Chip Kelly's squad. That's going to come up as well in future episodes for Locked On UCLA. And don't forget, we will react to the UCLA Utah matchup after the game is done. We'll get you all excited or sad, depending on what happens against the Utes. We'll be excited. Go make Locked On College Basketball your second listen today. They are a good listen. They're good ones. Just talking college basketball. They'll have you ready for March, just like we'll try to have you do with the UCLA slant, but they've got more of a national perspective with Andy Patton and Isaac Shade. In the meantime, that's going to do it for Locked On UCLA today. Bruins, Utes, low scoring, ugly slugfest. It is what I predict. Won't be pretty, but it'll be fun for college basketball enthusiasts on a late Thursday night, hopefully with no rain in the Southern California area. Stay safe out there. Have fun. Get your hands in the air, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fights. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.